Hello everybody, it's Stewart A. Swerdlow.
And Janet Diane Moya Swerdlow.
And this is the Expansionist News Podcast for the third week of September 2017. And the first things I need to tell you about is some very interesting things going on with the state or country of Israel, which is extremely unusual in comparison to what's happened in the past. First thing, Mexico President Enrique Peña Nieto said this past week that his country had accepted Israel's offer to help it and the United States develop Central America as Israel and Mexico seek to deepen business ties. According to the President of Mexico, we have agreed to establish and begin the negotiations to look over an agreement so that the commercial relationship between both nations intensifies and grows. In Central America, Peña Nieto said that Israel's assistance could bolster the United States and Mexico's efforts in the region, particularly in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. He noted that Israel brings experience in carrying out developmental projects in Africa, and Netanyahu's trip marks the first visit to Mexico by an Israeli prime minister. And Netanyahu invited Peña Nieto to Jerusalem. And then it gets even more interesting. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos are pledging to strengthen ties in areas like science and tourism as Colombia transitions from a post-conflict time period. Colombia and Israel have long enjoyed a close military alliance, though the relationship at times has been stressful. Santos called Israel a friend and an ally of Colombia. And there's even more. An unidentified Saudi prince conducted a secret visit to Israel earlier this past week in a bid to restart the peace process, according to Israeli radio. And it says, quote, "A prince of the Saudi royal court paid a secret visit to the country in recent days to discuss ideas for advancing regional peace with senior Israeli officials." According to Israeli radio, they did not name the visiting royal. However, they said that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said cooperation between Israel and the Arab states have never been closer. And Netanyahu said Israeli-Arab cooperation, although very largely unpublicized, is much larger than any other period in Israeli history. So something very strange going on. And it gets even more interesting because Israel has two new drone projects. The first is a drone helicopter made by Israel Aerospace Industries that would be capable of carrying up to 180 kilograms of cargo. And the second drone is produced by Aeronautics Defense Systems with a hybrid engine capable of carrying up to 90 kilograms. Israel has future plans for a tank that is to be equipped with technology currently under development, and it would make the tank version of the F-35 stealth bomber, which is invisible on radar and transparent, and would allow the crew to see the area around the tank without going outside of it. Very, very interesting. But what I have found even more interesting is that in Iraq, which has no diplomatic relations with Israel, there is an Iraqi magazine called Israeli Kurd. And it says that Israel has supported a movement for the independence of Kurdistan and has secretly helped the Kurds for 60 years. And according to this report, which is not verified at the moment, when Kurdistan becomes independent, there will be 200,000 plus Israeli Kurds who will emigrate to the new Kurdistan. So something very strange is going on. And in the recent months, Netanyahu has been to Australia, China, Japan, India, Russia, all over Africa, now Latin America. This is the first time that an Israeli prime minister has had such global influence and has been welcomed globally. It's almost as if Israel has become a rival to the United States and Russia and other major world powers. Noticeably, they have avoided the EU, which has been very anti-Israel in recent times. So Israel is in the process of connecting and collecting allies in the rest of the world, basically excluding the United States and the EU. With the exception, I may add, of Greece and Romania, which have been very close to Israel. Now, for the second time in a month, North Korea has launched a missile over Japanese airspace, and the intermediate-range ballistic missile from North Korea flew east over Japan before landing in the Pacific Ocean. United States Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said in a statement that these are provocations from North Korea, and we call on all nations to take new measures against the Kim regime. Japan's broadcasting network, NHK, said that the missile passed over Japanese airspace near Hokkaido, and they issued an urgent on-air alert warning the population in 12 prefectures in the country's north early Friday morning of last week. Now, NHK added there was no attempt to shoot down the missile that flew over Japan. They added that South Korean military is maintaining full readiness and tracking North Korean movements, which they do anyway. The launch is the 14th missile test conducted by North Korea in 2017. And by the way, the Israelis stated categorically this month that North Korea should be bombed, just like the Israelis bombed Iraq, Tunisia, and other countries that were developing nuclear capabilities. Now, why is everyone waiting to do something against North Korea? Well, especially Japan. North Korea, as I've mentioned many times before, is controlled by Japan. It's all a show. Japan wants to be an empire again, just like Turkey wants to be an empire again, and Russia, etc. Any other country would have shot down the missile or retaliated. If North Korea had shot a missile over the United States, they wouldn't exist anymore. Japan has a fake royalty, and the real one is in North Korea, and that's why this whole thing is a big show and a farce. Now, coming back to North America, Canada, another farce. Canada's Competition Bureau, funded by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government by $50 million annually, has investigated 3 organizations accused of denying mainstream climate science for over a year. Now, according to this report, it accused 3 groups: Friends of Science, the International Climate Science Coalition, and Heartland Institute, of making false and misleading claims about climate change, including that the sun is the main driver of climate change and not carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. And that's all true. You breathe out carbon dioxide every second of the day, so it is not a pollutant, otherwise we'd never be here anymore. In December 2015, EcoJustice, which has launched these reports, told the National Observer it would press the Commissioner of Competition to refer their matter to the Attorney General of Canada for criminal charges against the denier groups. So in other words, in Canada, if you deny what the government says you should believe, then you can be criminally prosecuted. And according to this report by Free Press, we are entering into dangerous territory of fundamental attack on free speech, which it actually is. So that and the problem is they are attacking people who deny climate change, but they don't do the same for climate alarmists who do the same thing all the time with false and misleading claim about climate change almost daily, particularly in regard to what the federal and provincial carbon pricing schemes will eventually accomplish. So the climate change promoters want regulations that will increase taxes and put strict regulations on Canadian citizens, but they are not attacked for saying anything about the climate. So Canada, as I've told you before, is more of a totalitarian state than the US or North Korea or the UK. Back to the United States, anti-fascist activists, or what they call Antifa, increasingly mobilized in the wake of President Trump's election, are unapologetic about what they describe as necessary use of violence to combat authoritarianism. And they say that the use of force is intrinsic to their political philosophy. Antifa activists justify their use of violence as self-defense against the inherent danger of fascist organizing when they themselves are fascist. And we have seen a rising interest in the movement since Trump's election, noting that six months ago, nobody ever heard of Antifa. But as early as 2016, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI warned state and local officials that Antifa had become increasingly confrontational and were engaging in domestic terrorist violence. However, no one is trying to stop the Fourth Reich uprising in the United States, and Trump is still supported by white supremacists, yet he has Jewish son-in-laws and grandchildren. Now, this is a very interesting story, which really is a Janet story, but maybe she has this from Stanford University, which has found that a computer algorithm could correctly distinguish between gay and straight men and women, 81% of the time for men and 74% for women. And it says facial detection technology and the potential for this kind of software can violate people's privacy or be abused by people. And according to this report, it uses deep neural networks, which are sophisticated mathematical systems that learn to analyze visuals based on large data set. The research found that gay men and women tend to have gender atypical features, expressions, and grooming styles, essentially meaning gay men appear more feminine and gay women appear more masculine. Well, duh. And according to this information, it says that faces contain much more information about sexual orientation than can be perceived and interpreted by the human brain, or etc. And so, according to this report also, it did not look at what they call people of color. I don't like that term. I have a color. Everyone has a color. Just because it's a darker color doesn't make you a person of color. Everyone on the earth has a color. So I don't like that term, but they didn't use, let's say, minorities or other races, only white people. And there was no consideration of transgender or bisexual people. And so the implications for artificial intelligence are vast and alarming, with billions of face images of people stored on social media sites and in government databases. The researchers suggested that public data could be used to detect people's sexual orientation without their consent. But it gets more frightening because the governments that continue to prosecute LGBT people could hypothetically use the same technology for populations against, let's say, political and psychological reasons as well. The Stanford study says that artificial intelligence could be used to explore links between facial features and other phenomena, like I mentioned, political, psychological, personality, etc. And people could be arrested based solely on the prediction that they will commit a crime. There was a movie done about that a long time ago. AI, or artificial intelligence, can tell you anything about anyone with enough data. So all of this is quite disturbing. You can go on.
Okay, I've been telling you to watch out for some specific terminology, as that basically will lead to New World religion, and so I've got quite a collection here going on today, so I'm just going to get started. For example, there are supposedly tens of thousands of witches casting a spell once a month around the world during the waning moon on Donald Trump. Vicki Adams, who's the owner of a well-known occult shop in Hollywood, said that the spell is not intended to harm the president, but it is to stop Congress from passing Trump-supported legislation on issues such as immigration and the environment. She says that all you need to perform the spell is an orange candle, an unflattering photo of Trump, tarot cards, sage, and a feather. So we have witches, we have spell casting, and we have all kinds of things going on here. And then, I think I reported on this story before, but it's one that keeps coming up in its own way. This is about Elon Musk. He says that technology is coming that has vastly more risk than North Korea. In fact, he also said that this single technology is, quote, our biggest existential threat, and that we are summoning the demon as we continue to develop it. So again, we are summoning the demon, we have witches, we have spells. And this is another story that keeps going around. I find this one on AOL just circulating over and over and over again, although it's an older story and I reported on it when it first came out. This one is by Jamie Dimon, chairman and CEO of JP Morgan, who claims that President Trump has, quote, awoken animal spirits, and this is always shown with a picture of bull or ball on Wall Street. So I found that very interesting. And so as I told you to keep watching for these kind of phrases in the news, because these are all triggers and these are ways of opening the frequency so that people become used to hearing these sorts of things. Now there's a lot of controversy that keeps going on about President Trump and his wife Melania. And in fact, recently there was, what's the name of the actress that wore the sweatshirt called Free Melania? She's been around, Murphy Brown?
Yes.
Candace Bergen. She wore that on some talk show here recently, Free Melania.
She gained a lot of weight, by the way.
Melania?
No, Candace Bergen.
Anyway, apparently there was an awkward moment when Trump actually was shaking his wife's hand when she introduced him at a U.S. Air Force event, which I saw, which was very awkward.
He doesn't know how to behave with people.
So apparently she welcomed her husband to the stage, and then as he was walking over to her, he extended his hand to shake hers. And then he mouthed, "Good job," ushered her off the stage with a gentle pat to her side, and said, "You go sit down now."
He said that out loud.
Yes, apparently.
Brilliant. What if I said that to you in public?
I'd have to hit you in public.
Which you do anyway.
Critics called the formal interaction bizarre for husband and wife, which is true. You don't usually shake the hand of your spouse.
I've never shaken your hand.
I don't think we ever have,
No.
ever. And we've been together 22 years, so what have they been together, about 8 years, 10 years?
I'm sure that they're not happy.
Well, they're put together as a show, they're not put together to be happy. Now this was interesting because this is something that I think you reported on not too long ago, but again, because it's on mainstream news and because of who said it, that's why I'm bringing this up. Because we find Alex Jones, host of InfoWars, continually on conventional news, which I found very odd. And he claims that President Trump is being drugged by traitors in his administration.
Listen to me. I told you, or on this podcast a long time ago, that I have a very good source that says that Trump and Melania are on psychotropic drugs and it has nothing to do with traitors.
Well, this is what
It has to do that they're mentally ill.
What is interesting, well, they're puppets, which he does say. But what's interesting, again, is the fact that this is on mainstream news, and usually for mainstream news, if they don't want it to be in the public eye, they ignore it. This is being said, this is being put in on all over the mainstream news. And this Mr. Jones goes on to say, "I've talked to people, multiple ones, and they believe that they are putting a slow sedative that they're building up that's also addictive in his Diet Cokes and his iced tea, and that the president by 6 or 7 at night is basically slurring his words and is drugged."
Listen to me very carefully. He's doing that 24/7, and he willingly takes these pills all day long.
And then also Jones says it's known that most presidents end up getting drugged. So how he knows that and from whom, again, I don't know. But it's all very strange to me that this is on mainstream news.
I think Alex Jones is on drugs. Not that I disagree with him, but his perspective of it is not correct.
Well, this is what they want the public to know, rather than your information, which is probably much more
I get
correct.
it straight from the source, people.
That's right. We don't tell you our sources. And now this was also interesting to me because I have talked to you before about how the democracy is on its way downhill.
It's gone.
Well, anyway, according to a study by the Department of Education, which says that the country's student loan debt is at an all-time high of $1.3 trillion. So there's 1.3, there's the 1313, that magic number, so to speak. Apparently, this survey done by Credible found that half of the millennials would rather give up their right to vote in the next 2 presidential elections than cut another loan payment check. Now, isn't that interesting? And,
I'd rather not vote and have no bills to pay.
well, the voting doesn't count anyway, so what's the...
Exactly.
And it says a little more than 40% of the millennials also said they'd give up ride-sharing services and traveling abroad for 5 years. They probably don't do it anyway. So I just thought that
Well,
was
I
very
couldn't do
interesting. And in Sweden, according to a new BBC interview, 3,000 Swedish commuters are now using microchips to pay for their journey. Apparently, the firm does not microchip people itself. They have to have it done somewhere else. But apparently there are several companies in Sweden now offering the service to their employees, which I think we've talked about that before.
I'm going to find out. I have family in Sweden, as you know, and I will find out if this is true.
Stephen Ray, who is overseeing the SJ Rail project, said that you can use the microchip implant to replace a lot of stuff. Your credit cards, the keys to your house, the keys to your car. And it says that there are an estimated 20,000 people in Sweden already using the microchips.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I've seen them being used on the television, but I don't know about
Swedish
the numbers.
people are not like that.
Apparently they use them the devices to swipe in and out of the office and even pay for food. Now, back to politics. This one is interesting to me because this is about our friend Hillary Clinton, and I always preface
Not our
it
friend.
by saying that she and Trump are, and all the presidents are related, so they're cousins. Anyway, apparently there's some kind of a show called With Her, and on this show, Hillary Clinton laments the fact that everyone made a huge deal over chief political rival Donald Trump's severed head, but not her own. Now, this is a crazy
She had
thing.
a severed head.
Apparently, and this is a crazy thing to talk about. But you might remember that sometime back, comedian Kathy Griffin had
Who I
a
used to
photo
like.
of herself holding Trump's disembodied head. Well, Clinton goes on to say that she said, quote, this was all interesting. We recently had this big kerfuffle, this condemnation of Kathy Griffin for the picture she had of herself holding a head of Trump, like a play on Perseus holding the head of Medusa. Now, she's bringing this up. Now, think about what a griffin is. We have Kathy Griffin. And now they're talking about Perseus holding the head of Medusa. And then she says they were selling t-shirts and mugs at the Republican National Convention with Trump holding my head, but nobody ever said a word.
I never saw that.
I didn't see that, and they're saying in the article nobody really saw it. But she's talking about Trump's severed head, her severed head.
She needs to just go away, go home, and start knitting for her grandchildren.
The point being is that we have, again, the mythology, Perseus, Medusa, we have a griffin, we have severed heads. And then you might have heard about South Korea publicly talking about a decapitation unit for Kim Jong.
Well, what are they waiting for?
Apparently, Korea's defense minister is boasting that it will create a new decapitation unit called the Spartan 3000, with the express intent of taking out North Korean leadership. Now, apparently, this brigade will be approximately 2,000 to 4,000 soldiers and will be established by year's end.
So they're going to have 2,000 to 4,000 soldiers sneak into North Korea and cut his head off.
I guess, and that's why I said.
And if you even had a plan like that, would you put that in the news?
Well, exactly, and so here, and 2,000 to 4,000 soldiers is a lot. And Spartan 3000, I mean, there has to be some kind of hidden meaning in that as well. So, point being is we're still talking about decapitated heads, cutting off the heads of the people to make you all dull and numb. And along that line now, there was an 8-year-old biracial boy's family in New Hampshire that claims that a group of white teens attempted to hang him while they were playing with a tire swing that was hung by a rope. Supposedly, they kind of pretended to put the rope around their own head, their own necks, and then they put it around his and ran off and left him. And he swung back 3 or 4 times. He managed to get the rope free and has pictures all over the internet of this boy's neck.
That's not nice. That's wrong.
It's very wrong. But it was interesting that here within a couple of days ago, I was in a hurry. I didn't have a chance to investigate it, but they had another, it was supposedly a play of a black man and a black child hanging a white boy.
I saw that. It was also wrong. It was a rapper who did a video, and that was absolutely incorrect. If that was a white musician hanging a black kid, he would be executed.
Right. So with that in mind, then...
So you know what, people? There's reverse racism in this country.
It's all about necks and heads and killing people. And then in Bangkok, there was a mother, 28 years old, who apparently tied a black rope around her baby's 1-year-old, who was 1 year old, around his neck. Then she apparently tugged on the rope, swung the boy in the air in front of the phone as he shrieked in pain before letting him go, throwing him on the bed because her husband wouldn't answer the phone. So this is what she did to get revenge at her husband. And then she says, you care about people a lot. This is your son. This is a rope. Look at it. It's not dead. I didn't kill it yet. Look at it. I will take it to go to die somewhere. You have to wait to see me today.
I hope they arrested her.
He sent that to her mother and sister and the police and all kinds. It was all over the news.
And did she get arrested?
Well, the police picked her up for, to just look at what's going on with her mind.
Someone should hang her and swing her around.
So the point being is now we have decapitation always in the news. Now we're having hangings in the news. So a lot of things about the throat and the head and getting rid of people. And speaking about the head and the face, President Emmanuel Macron, they claim, has spent around $30,000 on makeup for 3 months. And then they said that former French President François Hollande also spent about $36,000 per quarter on makeup and approximately $11,000 a month for his hairdresser.
Look at people. I use none of those and I look like this.
What can we say? And then back to the U.S. in Connecticut. New Milford Town Councilman Scott Chamberlain has resigned because apparently he was a member of the furry community.
Oh.
And his profile said that he tolerates rape.
For himself or others?
He didn't say. They said that people weren't so upset about his involvement in the furry fandom.
This is mental illness.
But in his profile, it said that he tolerates rape. So he defended himself, saying it has nothing to do with sex. It's an interest in cartoon animals.
It has everything to do about it. It's a sexual magic ritual scenario, period.
So, again, here we go. And back to another topic I've been teaching you about here lately is pedophilia. Japan has a new porn star, Kohi Nishi.
Japan is so conservative.
He's 24 years old. He looks like a little boy. He stands only 3'6", and apparently he earns a living by getting it on, it says, with ladies who look old enough to be his mother.
Oh my goodness.
But he maintains...
No psychological problems there.
No, he maintains that it's not just for the money and the women.
Right.
He hopes that his work, he's calling this work, will have a positive impact on society by preventing children from being sexually abused.
No, you're promoting it, idiot.
Just like war movies and shooter video games can contribute to peace. I don't see that one either.
God. He needs to be executed.
He said that he has a youthful look. He's only 24, remember. A trait that makes him particularly appealing to his fans, which I thought interesting.
Who would be appealed by
they're
this?
saying mostly the younger set and women. So women want to have sex with a little kid, I guess.
Well, that's on the news every day anyway.
And that's why I said pedophilia. He said there is no one who is an adult and looks more like a kid than me. So they're associating children with adult, even though they're not.
He's proud that he looks like an adult, a child, even when he's an adult,
yes.
And he's happy about this.
Yes, and he has. They gave the name of one of his films, the titles, and this is the title: "Having Sex in the Magic Mirror Boxcar with a Female College Student with F-cup breasts who wants to be a kindergarten teacher."
That's the name of a film.
That whole thing is the name of a film.
I'm sure it's different in Japanese.
I don't know, but it's basically, it is pedophilia that they're impregnating people with.
You need to get the zero and step on Tokyo.
Okay, and then speaking of film icons, Jim Carrey was in the news. Now, Jim Carrey...
Yes, I saw that.
Gave the most bizarre red carpet interview of all time. Now, of course, he's an actor, so we don't know if it's an actor, if it's
No, he's
bizarre.
taking drugs.
Apparently, he stopped to chat with E! News' Kat Sadler at Harper's Bazaar's Icons Party at the Plaza Hotel, which was part of New York Fashion Week. So, Carrey proceeds to tell Sadler that, quote, he wanted to find the most meaningless thing that I could come to and join. So, that was the only reason he was at the party, unquote. And then he continues on, here's the thing, it's not our world, we don't matter, that's the good news. So that was bizarre. And then somebody sent me this on Facebook about Jim Carrey. Apparently they're claiming that he's an artist, which again, he's an actor, so I don't know if he's an actor, if this is real or if it's a made-up thing. But anyway, it's a thing called I Needed Color. So, this 6-minute video has gone viral, and it supposedly shows him working in his art studio. It says, quote, quote, on a dazzling, colorful portrait of Jesus, because Carrey got into painting 6 years ago to heal a broken heart, unquote. Now, this was what was interesting to me, because this picture of Jesus is bright reds, yellows, and blues, which are to me are programming colors. And then he tells the audience that the energy surrounding Christ is electric. And what I just say, ELF programming, and the painting certainly captures that feeling.
What happened to him?
And then he goes on to say, you can find every race in the face of Jesus. I think that's how every race imagines Jesus. They imagine him as their own. So New World Programming, bringing all the world religions together.
Except that he was just one race and not all the other ones.
And then there's you might have seen this one, Akian Kramaric. This is a young woman who's, I watched this one as well. It's called Painting the Impossible. It's a long story. You can watch it on YouTube. The link will be posted. But long story short, she supposedly has a very unusual ability to paint, and she got these from Jesus and heaven. But she also talks about she was born at home, her siblings were born at home, her mother was from Lithuania, she has no relatives that she's aware of. From being born at home, she is indicating there's no birth certificate, no way to trace her. She talks about disappearing at the age of 5 and coming back, on and on and on. Supposedly she's painting Jesus as well. There are some people who say that this face that she's painted is what's on the Shroud of Turin. So this is also in the news. I suggest you watch the documentary. It's about 26 minutes long, and it's interesting because it makes her sound very unusual. And like we've been talking about, to me this is the blend of alien and human hybrids, which is coming more and more to the forefront. So New World Religion. And then not too long ago, this also came to me via Facebook. There is an author named Doreen L. Virtue, who writes for the publishing company Hay House. And Louise Hay, many of you know, has recently passed away, and she was in her 90s, and that was not her real name either.
No. Her last name was actually Looney.
So now Louise Hay is gone. Now we have Doreen Virtue. She wrote lots and lots of books. She recently announced that she was a born-again Christian and renounced all she had published about ascended masters as well as her tarot decks. Then she put a video out explaining this, but then that was taken down by her almost at once, and now she focuses her work on Jesus. And then I was looking, trying to find her real birth name, and she said, oh, I couldn't have made this up, it's my real name. So I went, of course, to Wikipedia, right? So we don't know how true or not true it is, but the interesting thing is it does not give her birth name. She was born in '58 to a Christian Science family in California. Then she married her first husband, Larry Shank. Then her second husband was Dwight Virtue.
Hence the name Virtue.
Exactly. And then she married a third time, Michael Tianahara. Then she married a fourth time.
She keeps getting married.
To Stephen Farmer. And then she was divorced in 2009. I don't know if she's been married
She's
since
pretty
then.
stable then, right?
I've been a vegan, your favorite kind of people.
Right, that means she has real good mind.
Since 1996. And now she is into taking care of animals, which to me is the agenda to take meat and protein out of your diet. So the person who sent this to me said, what if they're starting to take the people who were previously New Age authors and turning them to Jesus, and their followers will follow them just like all these other people are being followed. So it's just very interesting how they do things. And moving along into the gender issue again, this article was sent to me very interesting about British people expressing doubt about their gender identities. Apparently the Tavistock Clinic in London opened in 1989 with the Gender Identity Development Service. It said in 1989 they only had 2 referrals, and last year 1,400 children under the age of 18 were referred there.
Tavistock Mind Control Center.
Nearly 300 under the age of 12, some as young as 3 years old.
I trust what they do.
Now, Stephanie Davies Arai founded a website called Transgender Trend, which is a group for parents who question the trans narrative. It's about time. And the transgender narrative pretends there are no biological differences between boys and girls, and she says that this is harmful.
There's no biological differences.
That's the trans narrative. And she says that, that narrative is harmful. She said toilets are not gender neutral, but sex segregated for the privacy and dignity of both sexes. And then she says, for adults to teach children that girls can be born in the body of a boy is obviously confusing and upsetting for children because it's not true. Telling a child that they are transgender sets them on a path of fear of puberty, followed by puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones which will sterilize them, possibly surgery and a lifetime of medication. We have never done this to children before. We have no idea of the long-term effects, and children should be given the space to develop their personalities without labels.
Well, that's true.
So, at least we have somebody out there telling us part of the story. Then Dr. Joanna Williams, a university lecturer and author of the book Women versus Feminism, says the war on gender is bad for children. She believes schools are sowing confusion in children's minds
That's true.
and forcing them to unlearn the difference between boys and girls.
Right.
Then she says we have a blank state of gray neutrality, which forces children to see gender as complicated and problematic. And I couldn't agree more. I finally read
Somebody with a brain.
I finally read that article National
I
Geographic
bet she's
put
not
out.
a vegan.
Probably not. In January of 2017, and they have pages of different kinds of sexual stuff, and by the time you're through reading that, you are going to be so confused you won't know what gender you are, if anything. It's very confusing. So anyway, remember what we tell you. Follow what's inside of yourself and don't listen to other people. Be who you are, know what they're trying to tell you. So with that said, I want to remind you the Hyperspace Helper, great book, very short. It's got lots of good information. If you like this one, this is our follow-up, Hyperspace Plus. And this was getting to be a really hot seller, Healing Archetypes and Symbols. There are lots of colored pictures in there. So somewhere, people are liking all the color things that they can copy and do what they want with them. Decoding Your Life. I am working on the self-healing group webinars. Our next one is this Tuesday, but the next series won't start again until October. So if you're interested in that one, sign up. White Owl Legends. This one is a fascinating story about, I will just read you the back quickly. Agnes told Janet's father how she was taken to Mount Rainier and shown highly evolved spiritual people. Agnes saw these people shot and the bullets pass right through them. Mount Rainier is an extremely sacred and spiritual place to the indigenous natives, thus a fitting background for Agnes's involvement with Chief White Owl, her own indigenous spiritual guide. So, when Janet met Stewart, ta-da,
That sounds like a movie.
she gave him the manuscript, and he connected to the spirits of Agnes and Chief White Owl, and he felt it was his duty to record this archetypal story of creation. So this is also a very fascinating book.
Which I really didn't want to do.
You did a great job. And then we have The True Reality of Sexuality. This one was written back in 2002. Explained a lot of things to you that they're trying to confuse you about now. History, True Blood, Blue Blood, True Blood, and this also is very popular, True World History Humanity Saga. So lots of books. Oh, last couple more. I'm not sure if this is all or not. Stewart says, great little coffee table read. And of course, 1,099 daily affirmations on any subject practically that you want or need help with. Very easy. So you will be next in...
Poland. Well, yeah. Well, no, after we have our wedding next week for my son in New York. And then we have the bus trip, which is
sold
booked up
out
already. And then I go to Poland in October, and then Tampa in November, Nevis in December.
And the Nevis tour is still open. Airline tickets are going fast.
Yeah.
The hotel is going fast. So if you're interested in joining us for New Year's Eve celebration on the island of Nevis, you need to book that right away. January is our biggest, most intense class. It's our week-long Hyperspace Oversoul Extravaganza. Sign up for that. People are already signing up. If you need a payment plan, we can help you with that. And be sure you like our Facebook pages. And what else?
Well, I'm not sure if there'll be a podcast next week because we'll be away.
It'll just be we'll do it a little bit sooner.
We'll see if we can get something done.
Yeah, we'll do our best. And what else? Oh, you can join our membership on our site. Less than $1 a day. I'm sure you spend that much on beer and cigarettes, a lot of you. Maybe a hamburger.
I don't drink beer and I don't smoke cigarettes.
So, if you're interested in getting some good behind-the-scenes information, join our website, expansions.com.
And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.